welcome back to Media More with the Mediocre Modeler. Just got back from seeing Godzilla Minus One, and we really haven't talked about Godzilla that much. But I'm a big fan. uh, there, there's some. Long before they were calling them kaiju, they were giant monsters. I mean, that's what we had. We had Saturday morning cartoons, and we had giant monsters. Well, and there's comic books and blah blah blah. But you know, I could not wait for Monster Week to come on TV. And if I don't know if you had it in your area, but they would have themed weeks. So they'd have Stooges Week or they have Elvis Week. Well, they did the same thing with Giant Monsters. They would have Godzilla Week. They would have Gamera Week, and we're going to talk about Gamera too. But Godzilla is that's my favorite giant monster. I mean, I know some people. You're in the Godzilla camp, or you're in the King Kong camp. You know, I mean, you can like both. I like both, but at the end of the day, give me Godzilla, and Godzilla Minus One does not disappoint. I no spoilers, no spoilers, but the best way I can describe this movie is take Jaws, put it in post World War II Japan, and replace Jaws with Godzilla. And it's very important for the first third of the movie because you have to really care about the characters. If you're going to Godzilla, if you're going to this movie just to see Godzilla romp around and tear up Tokyo, that's in there. Don't get me wrong, it's in there. But there has to be more than that. And it's all in there. You got a good storyline. So I'd say the first third to almost half the movie, there was a point where I'm going, I'm gonna need a little bit more Godzilla. The other thing, and it it might be make or break. I like seeing movies in the theater, but this is subtitled, and what was my concern is I always hated going to seeing subtitled movies because sometimes the dialogue is going by so fast that you're like, by the time you've read what's at the bottom of the screen to know what they're saying, you look up and they're moved on, and you miss. I never missed a beat. The cadence and everything, it just flows really well. So by the time you get done reading the sentence, you can still look up and they're still emoting at that point from what they just said. No one talks over anyone. So I think if you're avoiding seeing it in the theater for that reason, don't worry about it. Don't worry. Definitely go see it. So once you get to the point where they're going after Godzilla, you're more than satisfied. It's worth all the rave reviews it's getting, to the point where my buddy Scott turns to me and says, "So what did you think?" And my response was the best. It's probably my favorite Godzilla movie, and the reason I say that is usually with these giant monster movies, especially Godzilla, and I guess with Gamera too, they would always tend to, like, oh, it's for kids, so they would be jokey about it, or they would dumb it down, or they just wouldn't play it straight. And that's what they did in this one. They played it straight. It was totally, hey, we're here and we got a giant monster to kill. How are we going to do that? So, if you're a Godzilla fan, I can't imagine you not enjoying this movie. So, Godzilla Minus One, you got a good thumbs up for me on that. So, while we're on the subject of giant monsters, let's talk about Gamera for a second. So this one kind of came out of nowhere for me back in September 7th of 2023. Netflix released a new animated series called Gamera's Rebirth. So Gamera was created to fight against Godzilla. I mean, not literally, figuratively. Toho created Godzilla and they were so popular with it, all the other Johnny come latelys, I'm sure when they first saw it, they were like, oh yeah, and then it was really popular, and they're like, we need our own Godzilla. Hence, Gamera. Now, I like Gamera. I would never want anyone to go, what would happen if Godzilla versus, oh no, who would win in a fight between Godzilla and Gamera? Well, I'm always going to choose Godzilla. But it would really be a close one. We can have that argument. No, we're not going to have that argument at all. We're not. But Gamera, just, I mean, he's a flying turtle that breathes fire. He does the spinny flying saucer turtle thing, or that's when he's all pulled into a shell. Or he can have his front arms and his head out and he can fly. And one of the biggest differences with this animated one, when he's flying, he's got the sea turtle arms out to act as wings. But when he gets on the ground, he's got the arms. He can regenerate just like Godzilla or whatever. And he was always supposed to be the protector of children. I think they were trying to do that for a while, which never really worked for me. This is kind of the line they're going down. There's a, I don't want to. There's kind of an alien content thing going on there, but it follows the story of four kids in Japan, and they first see Gamera come on the scene, and then all these other monsters. So you get the rogues gallery of Gamera's monster lineup show up in each episode. You get one monster. And if you know anything about Gamera, I always think about the one, which is the knife blade head, and I'm sure somebody was just like, we need a monster, and there's like a kitchen knife there, hey, let's put some legs on a lizard, and it was always kind of goofy, except for the fact that he could shoot these like kind of throwing stars out the side of his head. What they did in updating this creature was nothing short of brilliant, as far as I'm concerned. Just the way he moved, so they did a really good job of updating this character and his attacking monsters. The only problem I have with it, and it's the problem I have across the board, you've got young children swearing. And that's kind of where I draw the line. I bristle, I see that, I'm just like, and I'm not naive enough to think that children don't swear. I mean, pick up any YouTube video or TikTok. You see it all the time. It really, well, anyway, we're not going to go down that road. But aside from that, the storyline is good. And the characters, and it's only like, I think 8 episodes maybe. So if you're a giant monster fan, especially if you're a Gamera fan, check it out as well. by the time we got to the end of it, I was pretty much I was sold. I was sold by the time we got to the last episode. Let's move on to audiobooks. In the course of my day, sometimes I have some long drives to get to see some of my people, and it's really nice to have a good audiobook to listen to. I had gotten hooked on listening to the Firefly books, and they released a new book this year, book number 8, and it's called Coup de Grace, by Una McCormick. And it's the story of a young girl, 18-year-old girl on a planet. Her father is the local lawyer, and he's shot down in the streets. And the local police won't really do anything about it. So she ends up hiring the crew of the Firefly to find out, to track down the killers and figure out what's going on, bring them to justice. It's never as simple as you think it's going to be, and that's the strength of this story. I just love that crew. They just get into some of the weirdest adventures, and the way everyone deals with it. They're all very well written book. The one thing that is different about this one, if I'm remembering over the course of this book, the Annie is the main character. It's voiced by a female voice actress, and then everyone else is voiced by a male, which really helps to break up the story. I mean, you know who you're listening to, without a doubt. So, if you get a chance, and if you're a fan of Firefly, definitely well worth the listen or the read. I just, good story. Read it, listen to it, either way, good story. Now, let's talk about another audiobook. It's no secret that I love the Star Wars universe and all its varying forms of media. Even though I don't read the comics, I'm glad they're there. But whether it's animated or live action or literary audiobooks, give me a good story about a Jedi, and I'm pretty much on the team. So when they started the High Republic stories, I was full on board. Let's go. Let's learn about some new Jedi 100 years before the events of A New Hope or whatever. I was on board. That was great. And you get to this stopping point, and then they go even further back. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully this has something to do with that. Hopefully it all ties in. And those stories work. There were some good stories there, even further back. And I'm like, okay, great. But what about the initial stories? I understand we were here and then we went back a little further and we're over here, but let's tie this to that. And it had been a long time since I had seen a story, and I'm checking every month. I'm checking, like, well, when's the new release? What's going on? And I had pretty much given up, or I was distracted. Let's say I was distracted. I'm never going to give up on Star Wars. I was distracted and just on a whim, like, what's going on? What's the new release? And they released a story called, a series of stories, or stories by multiple authors in a compendium called Star Wars, The High Republic, Stories of Light and Life. And so what they are, just little vignette stories from different pieces of the stories we already have. And it gave me the answers that I was looking for. Thank goodness, because I was really getting to the point. I was getting angry with this that portion of the Star Wars story team. If I could have the ear of someone And maybe I just need to sit down, maybe go to StarWars.com and actually do some research and see where they are, because maybe there is a plan and I just haven't taken the time to go and look into it. But if there's not, I think that's the one thing I would say to them, because I feel it here in trying to produce videos for you. In order to maintain relevancy, in order to make people want to kind of tune in, you gotta give them something. And the Star Wars stuff, yes, I feel like a self-indulgent child. I don't know. There is plenty of Star Wars out there. We are very fortunate to have the wide array of stories, Star Wars stories we are. I mean, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Mandalorian. Did I already say Mandalorian? There's, oh, Bad Batch. Let's not forget the Bad Batch. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So it seems a little bit whiny because they haven't done this portion of it. But if you put this story out, finish it up. Have a plan. Let's get on top. Thank you for what is out there. I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more consistency. So you can take that with from a guy in the Midwest, one little guy in the Midwest. I'm sure they're not going to change their production practices just for me, but I can't be alone, and it would be nice. We're going to wrap this up by talking about some of the TV shows that I've been watching, and I feel like I'm a little bit late to the game on at least two of these. Just finished up watching the first season of Picard, which I really enjoyed 95% of. I'm going to stick with it. I was kind of pre-warned that, after season 1, season 2 gets a little bit hairy, but if you slog your way through it, it gets better. So that's where I am. I just haven't been able to make myself go back to this. I'm at the very beginning of season 2. I haven't been able to make myself get back into it. So watching that, I wanted to watch Monarch and Back to the Giant Monsters, and it's on Apple TV Plus. Well, while I had Apple TV Plus, I've heard a lot of good reviews, mainly from my buddies over there at IFB, about Silo. So I started watching Silo, and I'm pretty hooked. Silo is just good old-fashioned post-apocalyptic sci-fi. It's a bunch of people who live in a silo underground. They've been down there for 147 years, and they don't know anything. They know what the mechanics know mechanic stuff. The sheriff keeps control of the city, and everyone has a part to play. And that's the beginning and end of it. Somebody dies, and we're on a quest to figure out, well, why is that? Why did that happen? What did they know? And what are we doing? So Silo is kind of addictive. That's one of those one. Am I late to the game? Yes. But what I do like about being late to the game is I can binge it. I can watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time and get my sci-fi fulfillment going. Now, Monarch is... I'm pretty sold on Monarch as well. There've only been 3 episodes, and I think I was lucky enough to catch them on the second week because I watched 2 episodes in a row. I don't think they did like Star Wars in the very first week they released 2 episodes. So the first two episodes, okay, we got a good story. We got a good start going on. The two main characters, a little bit whiny for my taste. But if I lived in a world where, I had to deal with Godzilla and blah, 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 I might be a little PTSDs too. But of the three episodes, this third episode I think was probably the weakest so far. I wasn't exactly like waiting for it to end, but I was waiting for something else to happen. So when they left it, there was a big radioactive glow in Alaska. So something pretty big is probably getting ready to happen. But we shall see this week on Monarch. That's pretty much it. I guess it's back to building models now. So until next time, this has been the Mediocre Modeler with Media and More. We'll see you next time. Pew 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 pew.